My heart still races when I think back to that chilling night. It happened a few years ago, when I was just a 15-year-old kid living in the small, eerie town of Ravenswood. My friend, Jake, and I had a twisted tradition of playing hide and seek in the dead of night, embracing the darkness to intensify our game. There were no rules, no boundaries, we could hide anywhere our imagination dared us. One ominous evening, it was Jake's turn to seek, and I was the hapless fugitive. Feeling mischievous, I decided to take the game to a whole new level. Instead of hiding in the usual spots, I bolted towards the dense, looming woods. I thought it would be a thrill, adding an element of terror to our game. I couldn't have been more wrong. As I ventured deeper into the sinister woods, the moonlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy of trees. That's when I stumbled upon an ancient, decrepit cabin that seemed to have been forgotten by time itself. Its front door hung wide open, a grotesque invitation into the unknown. Despite my growing apprehension, curiosity got the better of me. Cautiously, I entered the forsaken cabin, each creaking floorboard echoing in the darkness. The air inside felt heavy with secrets, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. I waited in one of the dimly lit bedrooms, the minutes dragging on like hours. Boredom began to gnaw at me, and I considered giving up my hiding spot. Just as I was about to surrender, I peered out the window and saw a shadowy figure approaching. My heart pounded like a drum, and I held my breath, not daring to make a sound. The approaching steps grew louder, and it seemed like the person was right outside the window. Then, out of nowhere, a deafening, bone-chilling pounding rattled the room. I let out a scream, startled beyond belief. It wasn't funny, it was terrifying. The relentless pounding continued, 4 or 5 times, until it abruptly stopped. Trembling, I dared to lift my head and look out the window, only to find that the mysterious figure had vanished into the night. I called out for Jake, yelling that I'd had enough of his twisted prank, but there was no response. Suddenly, the front door burst open with a thunderous crash. Panic surged through me as heavy footsteps advanced towards my hiding spot. Every step reverberated through the wooden floor, each one echoing doom. My heart raced faster, and my mind raced even faster. I had locked the front door when I entered, so who could it be? My eyes darted back to the window, where I saw a flashlight beam piercing through the darkness. The realization hit me like a freight train, the intruder in the cabin was not Jake. Panic coursed through my veins as I sprang into action. I leaped out of the window, landing on my feet with an adrenaline-fueled grace, not caring about the pain. Jake shone his flashlight on me, and I wasted no time, sprinting for home, my heart pounding in my chest. I implored him to follow, gasping out that there was a sinister figure inside the cabin. At first, he thought I was playing another prank, but the terror in my eyes convinced him otherwise. We never told our parents what happened that night. It was a secret we decided to keep, a pact between 2 terrified teenagers. Looking back, I realize how foolish I had been, risking my life for the sake of a childish game. I learned a harrowing lesson that night, one that continues to haunt me, that evil can lurk in the most unexpected of places, even in the darkness of Ravenswood. It was a moonless night as I ventured into the unknown, deep within the twisted woods of Ravenshadow Forest. I often took late-night walks, exploring the eerie paths around my ominous town of Grimhaven. This night, however, would be etched into my very soul, for I stumbled upon a trail that had eluded me until now. The air was thick with foreboding, and the twisted branches of the sinister trees clawed at the midnight sky. I had strayed far from the safety of my familiar neighborhood, into a land untouched by light. A few miles from my accursed home lay a sprawling, malevolent park that hid more secrets than I dared imagine. As I roamed this unholy place, the hour grew later, and the shadows grew darker. I knew Grimhaven Park had a curfew, but I cared not, for something unholy beckoned me forth. Just before the clock struck 7, my blood turned to ice. I stumbled upon a decrepit cabin, tucked away in the shroud of night, a structure I had never seen before. The cabin stood there, a sinister sentinel in the desolation, its very existence a blasphemous secret. Neglected and forsaken, it seemed abandoned by both God and man. Yet, an insidious curiosity consumed me, and I couldn't resist approaching. Foolish, I was, to disregard the danger that oozed from every darkened crevice. As I drew closer, the darkness itself seemed to deepen, as if the night had taken on a malevolent life of its own. A sudden cacophony, a horrendous pounding, shattered the silence. It echoed through my very bones, sending shivers down my spine. Panic clawed at my heart, urging me to flee, but a sinister fascination held me in its thrall. With trepidation, I ventured to the rear of the cabin, where the source of the ominous pounding awaited. There, imprisoned in the basement, a girl, her age mirroring mine, pounded desperately on a window, her screams tearing at the fabric of my sanity. I could scarcely discern her words, but the urgency in her eyes spoke volumes. Yet, in that benighted basement, terror held sway. She gestured for silence, her trembling finger pressed to her pallid lips. I fumbled for my phone, seeking to summon the authorities, but a cruel twist of fate severed my connection to the world beyond. Desperation clawed at me, so I resorted to typing my queries in the Notes app, careful not to betray our presence. She confirmed her peril, her nod an affirmation of unspeakable horrors. My inquiries about other potential malevolent souls lurking nearby were met with her profound uncertainty. With a heavy heart, I vowed to liberate her. Armed with naught but a kitchen knife, I scoured the cabin's forsaken rooms, uncovering no trace of our tormentor. Then, I descended into the depths of that sinister abode, where I beheld a sight that could only manifest in the darkest of nightmares. In a pitiful cage, barely larger than a coffin, she lay, half-naked and adorned with the scars of torment. Her frail form bore the marks of savage brutality, and the stench of despair hung heavy in the air. Her voice, a wretched whisper, detailed the atrocities inflicted upon her, a relentless tormentor who forced upon her a nightmarish cocktail of mind-altering substances. I sought a means to free her from her wretched prison, and with a sledgehammer discovered in that unholy place, I shattered the lock that held her captive. As she emerged, her feeble, malnourished form barely stood. We fled that accursed cabin, but the darkness that clung to it seemed to seep into our very souls. As we descended the creaking porch, the distant rumble of a car reached our ears. Dread consumed us, for Emily, the girl I had rescued, knew the malevolent truth. It was the fiend, the one who had ensnared her, drawing near. We fled, limping through the night, our hearts racing, and our breaths like ghosts in the ether. The approaching vehicle taunted us with its infernal presence, yet it passed us by, sparing us from an encounter with the very embodiment of evil. I never learned the fate of Emily or the vile man who tormented her. The memory of that night lingers, haunting my dreams, a reminder that in the depths of darkness, malevolence thrives, and horrors unimaginable await those who dare to tread where sanity falters. Grimhaven, with its secrets and shadows, still beckons, a chilling reminder that evil endures, lurking in the most unexpected corners of the world. It was the bitter heart of winter in the late 2000s, and my family and I lived in a remote cabin deep within the unforgiving woods. The frigid isolation had its charm, but on one fateful night, terror gripped us in its icy embrace. I was just a teenager back then, and my mother and I were alone in that rustic haven. My father, the sturdy protector of our family, was miles away at work. I was knee-deep in the mundane task of washing dishes, lost in the monotonous rhythm of scrubbing away the remnants of our evening meal. Then, it happened. A sudden darkness enveloped the cabin, extinguishing the feeble glow of our kerosene lamps. I froze, the soapy water dripping from my trembling hands, as the shadows danced ominously around me. A bone-chilling sense of dread crawled up my spine, for I knew I was not alone. There, just beyond the frosty windowpane, a sickly pale light pierced the abyss. A flashlight, its cold beam piercing through the glass and fixating on me. Panic surged through my veins as my heart pounded like a drum. The intruder, shrouded in darkness, began toying with us. A malevolent force, taunting and merciless. The eerie glow of that flashlight carved grotesque shapes into the cabin's interior, casting sinister silhouettes upon the walls. I stumbled back, my voice a trapped scream as I tried to call out to my mother. She, too, was paralyzed by the encroaching terror. As the intruder's malevolent intentions grew bolder, desperation seized us. But then, in the darkest moment of that cursed night, a miracle. The cabin door burst open, and there he was, my father, an unexpected savior. His return was a gift from the heavens, a beacon of hope in our hour of despair. With an adrenaline-fueled fury, my father confronted the intruder. A harrowing struggle ensued, a fierce clash between good and evil, light and shadow. In a dramatic act of self-defense, my father thwarted the intruder's sinister designs, ensuring our family's safety. We survived that horrifying night, but we were forever scarred by the chilling encounter. The memory of those desperate moments haunted our dreams, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most remote corners of the world. We left that remote cabin behind, seeking refuge in a safer place. But the indelible mark of that terrifying incident would forever remain with us, a chilling tale of survival in the heart of the wilderness. My name is Daniel, and I've got this cabin nestled deep in the heart of the woods, far from civilization. It's my sanctuary, a place to escape the chaos of life. But something happened last summer that sent shivers down my spine. I hadn't been up there in months because work had me chained to my desk. But, finally, on a Thursday evening, I drove the winding 2.5-hour path to my isolated retreat. The excitement bubbled inside me as I approached the cabin, surrounded by 24 acres of wilderness. It was as remote as you could get. My first day there was perfect. I fished, I relaxed, and I let the serene isolation wash over me. But as the sun began to dip below the horizon, something strange happened. A knock echoed through the cabin. Who could it be? I thought. I never had visitors here, not in all the years I'd owned the place. I cautiously approached the door, and when I flung it open, there was nothing but the empty, shadowy forest. I called out, announcing this was private property, but received only silence in return. Dismissing it as perhaps a prank or my imagination, I returned inside and prepared for bed. But just as I was drifting off, it happened again. A relentless knocking, this time at my bedroom window. My heart raced as I sat up, expecting to confront the intruder, but the night held only the eerie stillness of the woods. I threw open the window and yelled for them to leave, repeating that this was private property. But whatever or whoever it was, they had vanished into the night. Annoyed and unnerved, I returned to bed, my senses on high alert. The forest outside seemed to come alive with strange noises. Rustling leaves, distant whispers, and the feeling of being watched. It was paranoia's cruel grip taking hold. I lay there, eyes shut tight, praying for the night to pass uneventfully. But dread weighed on me. Morning broke, but my relief was short-lived. The knocks returned, not at the front door, but at the bedroom door inside the cabin. My heart pounded like a drum as I retrieved my gun from under the bed. The knock ceased, and I flung open the bedroom door, ready to confront my tormentor. Again, emptiness met me. My search of the cabin revealed nothing, except for one unsettling detail: the front door stood wide open, inviting the wilderness inside. Whoever had invaded my sanctuary had left no trace. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched as I packed up and left early. I didn't return to the cabin for a month, but when I finally did, there were no more strange occurrences. Still, the memory of those eerie nights lingers, and I can't help but wonder who or what had trespassed into my remote, isolated world. When I was just a kid, my family and I ventured to our grandparents' secluded cabin deep in the woods. We frequented this rustic retreat, but this visit would forever haunt my memories. We were an extensive bunch, 3 brothers, 2 sisters, and our parents, setting out on an eerie, moonlit night, an hour's drive from home. The cabin was an imposing structure, large but lacking modern amenities like electricity and plumbing. This always unsettled me, but what was to come would make me yearn for the comfort of the city. Upon arrival, we embraced the wilderness, playing games and basking in the eerie solitude. Dad fired up the grill, sizzling burgers and hot dogs, and after dinner, we huddled around a campfire, relishing the warmth and indulging in s'mores. But as the darkness deepened, a primal urge stirred within me. I needed to heed nature's call, and with trepidation, I ventured into the foreboding woods. The shadows whispered secrets, and the leaves rustled ominously. I crept deeper into the pitch-black forest, the cacophony of the campfire fading behind me. My fear of being seen by others overcame my fear of the woods, but little did I know what horrors awaited me. After relieving myself, I retraced my steps to the path, yet a sinister sound stopped me in my tracks, a rustling in the underbrush just 20 feet away. I assumed it was some woodland creature, perhaps a deer, but it sounded far too massive for comfort. My heart raced as I bolted back to the path, but the unseen presence pursued me. It was not crossing the path, it was following me. Paralyzed by terror, I watched as it halted, just shy of the trail. In the dim moonlight, a face emerged from the shadows, a twisted visage of a man, lurking behind a tree in the woods. His gaze bore into my soul, a madman's stare that froze my blood. Panic seized me, and I sprinted back towards the campfire, not daring to look back. Reuniting with my family, I stuttered out my tale of the man in the woods. They dismissed it, attributing it to childish imagination. But fate had more horrors in store. Later that night, my older brother, David, entered the cabin, pale-faced and trembling. He claimed to have seen the same creepy man outside, standing ominously in our front yard. We gathered around the window, peering out into the darkness. There he was, the ghastly figure, wearing a dark sweatshirt and tattered jeans. He stared malevolently at our cabin. Dad, determined to confront this sinister intruder, stepped outside, demanding to know his intentions. But as soon as he spoke, the man charged towards him with unholy speed. Dad barely managed to slam the door shut and lock it in time. The man pounded the door, his frantic blows shaking the cabin. Fear consumed us. Dad, with a rare stroke of luck, had a cell phone, and he dialed 911. The distant wails of sirens were our only salvation, a lifeline to sanity in the midst of this nightmare. Minutes stretched into hours as we cowered inside the cabin, praying for the police to arrive. Eventually, the relentless pounding ceased, and the man vanished into the night. The police eventually descended upon the cabin, scouring the property. They found the man lurking in the shadows, far from done with his malevolent intent. This sinister tale unfolded in my 8th grade summer, a chilling encounter that forever etched the memory of that nightmarish cabin visit into my young mind. During my early days, back when I was just a young lad, my baseball teammates and I embarked on a summer weekend trip to one of our teammates' remote cabin. Little did we know that this journey would soon become a bone-chilling tale etched into our memories forever. As the night draped its inky shroud over the woods, we pitched our tents outside the cabin, eager for a night of camaraderie beneath the starry canopy. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and the distant echoes of chirping crickets were the only sounds that serenaded us. But then it happened, the moment that sent a shiver down my spine. A creeping unease settled upon me as I noticed a looming shadowy figure lurking near our tent. My heart pounded in my chest like a frantic drumbeat, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from the sinister silhouette. I mustered the courage to wake my friends, and together, we embarked on a treacherous investigation into the abyss of that moonless night. The moment we approached the figure, it seemed to melt into the darkness, vanishing like smoke in the wind. The eerie silence was only broken by the rustling leaves, and our uneasy breaths hung in the air. Hours passed, and just as we began to convince ourselves that it was mere imagination, terror reared its grotesque head once more. An unknown, unseen hand slowly unzipped our tent, the sound echoing like a deafening scream in the silence of the night. Panic and confusion swept over us like a suffocating blanket. Fearing for our safety, we hastily abandoned the flimsy sanctuary of our tents and sought refuge inside the cabin. Our minds raced with questions, each more terrifying than the last. Who or what could have been lurking in the darkness, playing sinister games with our minds? Despite our efforts to uncover the identity of the mysterious intruder, the cabin offered no solace. It was as if the very walls held secrets, whispering eerie tales of the woods that refused to be silenced. The night wore on, an agonizing eternity of fear and uncertainty. As dawn's feeble light finally pierced the inky veil, we gathered our belongings and fled the cabin, leaving behind the haunted memories that still haunt my dreams to this day. The unsettling encounter in those woods remains a mystery, a chilling enigma that continues to send shivers down my spine whenever I think back to that terrifying summer weekend. I remember that cabin getaway with my dad like it was yesterday, though I wish I could forget it. We ventured deep into the woods, seeking refuge from the chaos of the world. The rustic cabin stood secluded by the edge of a glassy lake, surrounded by towering pines that seemed to whisper secrets among themselves. Little did we know, those woods held a terror beyond imagination. As we settled in, the cabin exuded an eerie stillness, as if the very forest was holding its breath. Dad and I tried to shake off the unease, telling ourselves it was just the isolation playing tricks on our minds. We huddled around the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa, attempting to find comfort in the dancing flames. It wasn't long before the tranquility of our haven was shattered. A low, guttural growl echoed through the night, sending shivers down my spine. I looked at my dad, his eyes wide with fear mirroring my own. We grabbed a flashlight, and with trembling hands, we ventured outside to investigate. The moon cast an eerie glow on the clearing as we cautiously made our way toward the source of the sound. That's when we saw it, illuminated by our feeble flashlight beam. A massive bear, with fur as dark as midnight, stood before us. But what sent icy chills racing down my spine were its eyes, deep red, like smoldering embers in the darkness. The bear's behavior was unlike anything we'd ever seen. It wasn't foraging for food or going about its barely business. Instead, it stood upright, its head swaying gently from side to side. It was like watching a macabre dance, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from those crimson orbs that seemed to bore into my soul. Dad and I exchanged terrified glances, knowing we had to retreat to the cabin. As we backed away slowly, the bear's head followed our every move, never breaking its unnatural rhythm. The growls grew louder, echoing through the woods in a haunting cacophony. We dashed back inside the cabin, locking the door behind us, but that did little to ease our fear. We huddled together, our breaths shallow, as the bear continued to circle the cabin, its eyes casting eerie red glows through the windows. The night seemed endless, and our fear was palpable. We listened as the bear scratched at the walls, its growls vibrating the very foundation of our sanctuary. We couldn't make sense of it. This wasn't the behavior of any bear we'd ever heard of. With the first light of dawn, the eerie presence of the bear finally lifted, and it disappeared back into the woods. We wasted no time gathering our belongings and fleeing the cabin, leaving behind that dark and foreboding place. Even now, years later, the memory of that red-eyed bear haunts my dreams. We never found out what compelled that creature to terrorize us that night, and I'm not sure I ever want to know. It was a nightmarish reminder that in the heart of the wilderness, there are forces beyond our understanding, lurking in the shadows, waiting to turn our peaceful retreats into nightmares.